I didn't know what I wanted to be or what I wanted to do. I needed a job and I needed somewhere to live. I came to Cambridge because a friend offered me a room in a house, but I never meant to stay here. I was used to hills. It was flat and grey and full of what seemed to be aloof young students and nowhere to have a good walk. I did want to travel, so I took a job sweeping the streets to save up money. I'd always liked history, but especially the history they don't teach you at school. I was always curious about local history, who lived in the old houses that I walked past. And I was fascinated by things like the Normans in Sicily, the Byzantine Empire, whether the descendants of Alexander the Great's armies still lived in Afghanistan. So I swept the streets and saved. I went to Sicily and found the Normans, to Israel and stood in a Crusader castle built by Catholic knights, now commemorating Israeli terrorists killed by the British, while outside newspaper headlines condemned Palestinian terrorists. To Turkey, I met the Kurds. To Afghanistan, just before it was torn to pieces. I always wanted to go a bit further each time, and what started as journeys into a past I'd romanticised taught me that the world was bigger than Western Europe, that there's a lot of history we were never taught, that one man's freedom fighter was another's terrorist, that today's world was as interesting as the past. And over the years, in between the travelling, the road sweeping became not just temporary work, but my job. I became a road sweeper. I come from a comfortable middle-class background. My dad worked for an insurance company. My mum was a physiotherapist. I went to college to study history and politics, and I had wanted to become a teacher. Some people thought it strange that cleaning the streets became my job, but I learnt just as much from the job and the people I worked with as I had done at university. We live in a culture where dirty jobs and the people who do them are not rated very highly. And people in low-paid jobs are threatened with pay cuts to make them more productive, while those on high salaries are offered bonuses. And for some people, the moment you put on high visibility clothes, actually you become invisible. I always remember someone who used to pass me every day when I was sweeping the streets, and she never said hello. Only when I met her in my ordinary clothes did she ask me what I did for a living. I think we all need to live in clean and sanitary conditions. I think guaranteeing that for people is a respectable thing to do, and maybe we should all have a little more respect for it. From the start, I worked with a guy called Ernie. He showed me what to do. He was patient. He listened to my problems, and he brought the tea twice a day. The city centre was his patch. He was proud of keeping it clean and made sure that I did too. We became good friends, and he introduced me to everyone in the centre of Cambridge. People started saying hello to me. It mattered to me to actually feel some sense of belonging somewhere. I think getting to know the town, the people and places rekindled my interest in British history. But what I was really interested in was not the history of kings and prime ministers I'd learnt at college. I wanted to know who had lived in the old houses around us and how they lived. My wife and I needed to save for a place to live, so I started doing extra jobs, and it really came together when I trained to work as a guide for historic tours of Cambridge. And after a while, I started doing tours around the back streets of Cambridge, not King's Parade, but Mill Road and Chesterton, Newtown and Newnham, tours for local residents. I felt that people should know about the town, rather than just the colleges, like the other tours did. Everyone's history is interesting, not just the great and the good. That skews how you see the past, which skews how you see the present. And while sweeping the streets, I was asked to go to schools to talk about litter and recycling. And that grew and became part of my job. I'd take a bag of rubbish into school and tip it on the floor and get the children to clear it up and encourage them to keep their streets and parks clean. At work, I became the union rep, trying to represent my colleagues and proving the job was about so much more than just getting the cheapest service. I studied politics alongside history when I was at college, and I've always really believed in the process, that people should get informed and involved and get in dialogue with one another. That's the only way things can be solved. The union was part of that. The university ended up giving me an honorary MA for community engagement, despite highlighting historic town versus gown tensions on my tours. The university is at last trying much harder. The degree pulled everything together. I never became a history teacher, but maybe I ended up doing what I'd hoped to do, to encourage people to look at their city, appreciate it, and feel it's all theirs, King's College Chapel and the streets and parks where most people live, and feel that they can get involved in trying to shape its future. Everything I did taught me a lot about Cambridge and about people. There are no longer riots between town and gown. What is sad is that there's almost an indifference. If you live in Abbey or Arbury, it's easy to feel King's Parade is not part of your city. And how many students have visited Arbury Court? Cambridge is becoming a city of students, the very rich and the few who qualify for social housing. We had to work hard, but my wife and I could buy a house in Cambridge back then on our wages. Is that still possible for people now? All those working in the service industries, cleaning the streets, working in the shops or Addenbrooks, are now having to come from much further afield. So many of the new buildings seem to be student accommodation or high-value housing. Couldn't the colleges use some of their land to build much-needed social housing close to the city? Or will we just end up making people drive in from distant places in the Fens to service those lucky enough to live in the city, and leave as our legacy a very unequal and traffic-congested Cambridge? Now Shire Hall is up for sale, and even the Castle Mound might be closed off from the public. It feels like all of the city is up for sale to the highest bidder, and if you oppose it, you're made to feel you're standing in the way of progress. But whose progress and whose profit? We can shape this city, or someone else will do it for us.